after subdivision. The Hunter and Lower North Coast Tourist Authority says tourism is a major hope for the future development of the region. In particular, Port Stephens is said to have tremendous tourist potential. Now Port Stephens is undergoing a tourism development boom. I'm Mark Matho and I'll have full details in NBN's Hour of News at 6 tonight.
Put it back!
Run them on an obstacle course first.
What about the building by business? Pick it up. There's someone down the board
The Lake Macquarie Yachting Fraternity has applauded the state government's decision to dredge Swansea Channel. The $200,000 project will begin early next year. Local yachtsmen say the project is overdue and say it is vital to the future of sailing and tourism in the lake. I'm Mark Matho and I'll have full details in NBN's Hour of News at 6 tonight.
Really good. Okay. I'd like to just show you some
Very good.
That's the major changes take place in the introduction of this traineeship system.
Myself for Noreen related to the
Tomorrow and make because I now take on a new diet, but a change that you can make, then we unleash natural foods which are not new to us. In 1930, Leslie Owen Bayhall, who are prepared to... Well, this will be the 23rd.
The essence of it is to provide a balanced diet of natural foods, which is, through really long studies and a very long experience, is taking people closer to the foods that we would have if we lived in the wild. We're not going into the wild, but more natural foods than we're having through processed and refined foods.
Why are you opening a branch in Newcastle?
There's been so much interest. The request has come from the local people, and we're answering that response. And there's been a branch in Sydney, Wollongong, and 20 others around Australia. And we've been established for 25 years, and it's none too soon to come to Newcastle.
Some people might say that good eating habits are dictated by common sense. Is this the case, or do people need to be educated?
There's definitely educational knowledge necessary, and this is the society's role. And it's through our journal, of which we send copies to our subscribers, that we pass on this precise information, as well as our various publications. Common sense has a great deal to do with applying that knowledge, but there's very specific advice which we're spelling out at the meeting.
I'm Matthew Clark. In a bid to cut costs, the Royal Newcastle and Belmont hospitals will close wards and cut back services over the Christmas period. The Hunter Medical Association has expressed concern and anger over the move and claims it's part of a wider trend to cut public hospital services altogether. For the details of this story and all other news, watch NBN's Hour of News tonight at 6.
Why are you so concerned about the letter you received at the committee last night about hospital placement?
Feelings on the letter that was canvassed last night.
We received a letter last night explaining that the hospital facilities would be reduced markedly for a 6-week period over the Christmas holiday time. So much so that people with chronic medical conditions, a lot of people in pain, would have their treatment delayed by up to 6 weeks or more, because the hospitals choose to close down a large amount of their services.
Meeting last night. What does it mean? Is it part of a wider... part of a wider trend in the public hospital system?
We believed when we discussed this last night in committee that this is further confirmation of a deep government plan. We think that the delay in the settlement of the doctors' dispute, the government action over the psychiatric patients in the Richmond report, and this type of action just confirm that the government places health in this state at a very low priority and would rather use government funds for other things like railway carriages.
The Coal Chain Council was formed this year to improve the movement of coal from the mine face to ships. The council consists of key union representatives, mine owners, the MSB and the Joint Coal Board. Last week the coal chain broke down when the Seamen's Union placed bans on 2 Singaporean ships waiting to load coal. The union campaign is aimed at having more Australian ships used to carry export coal. It's also to guarantee conditions for sailors on board. After tabling a full report on Singapore's new shipping regulations, the council convinced union leaders to lift the ban. However, bans on Panamanian and Liberian ships together with the new tax on fringe benefits, the loss of entertainment expenses as a tax deduction is expected to raise a lot of money for the government. The entertainment expense factor will raise more than $300 million next financial year. But for some restaurants, it's a real blow. The Bistro in Derby Street has built a reputation around the business lunch. Gary Ashford says that
I think some will be quite severely affected in the short-term base. And as a longer-term proposition, probably the market will probably finish up levelling out. Some restaurants have been designed to cater for the type of entertainment expenses that have been cut out the last day. It's rather a shock to some people, I imagine, to do it. We thought it could have been coming about, and it has come about as it's happened.
what sort of percentage of business are we looking at for some restaurants that normally do cater for, say, business lunches?
Well, just as ourselves, in particular, probably about half our trade before was business lunches or business dinners.
So, I think it'll be more next year that we start to have this problem. We really won't know for a month, and then of course Christmas will come, so I still think people will, thinking about it, it's a little bit early to jump to any conclusions, but people will still like the pleasures of eating out. And
it means that the reason why business will not expand, and there has been a drop-off in nighttime trade because of the RBC and because of
afternoon luncheon. Unfortunately, with the announcement today, I've had to shelve all those plans because I don't think that it's going to be a viable concern now.
So for many executives who used to enjoy a meal on the business account, yesterday's lobster thermidor is today's fish and chips. Mr. Keating was right. There is no such thing as a free lunch. With his power cut off.
Well, the little boat has been given to us by a member of our organisation. Part of the total concept of the project is that it's a bicentennial project, and as such, from now until the time it's launched in late 1987, it will be a tourist attraction. And we're putting a cover over the boat to protect the timbers from the weather and also the workers. And additionally, we're setting up a small souvenir shop on the site. So from the middle of next month, mid-October, we will be fully operational as a tourist attraction, and we'd love to see hundreds of people here to find out how the shipbuilders of early days built our first steamship.
Has there been much local? The Minister also announced an investment of $3.5 million over the next 2 years for new computer equipment for the port. And this, he says, should improve the overall efficiency of the port's operations.
There you go. It's only just a mock-up, just to go through the routine, so it looks going to be good.
Another $100.
Done. It's only just a mock-up.